Now please recognize the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Mann, for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Secretary. Thank you for being here this morning. As you know, I represent the Big First District in Kansas, the #1 beef, sorghum, and wheat producing district in the country. As the subcommittee chairman for the Livestock, Dairy, and Poultry subcommittee here, I'm concerned with several proposed rules that would impose nonsensical and costly regulations on ag producers in my district and across the country. From USDA's packers and stockyards rules, which extend well beyond the bounds of congressional intent and ignore legal precedent, to the new USDA Food Safety Inspection Services Salmonella regulatory framework, which has left the industry scrambling for answers. My view is the federal government should either support producers or get out of their way. I look forward to working with my colleagues to craft and maintain sound, comprehensive livestock policy that honors the work of every link of the animal agriculture supply chain. Mr. Secretary, first question, on January 24th, APHIS sent a final rule out to ONB that would require electronic identification ear tags for animal disease traceability and is a requisite for official interstate movement of certain cattle and bison. And I understand the goals here. I guess my question is, what are USDA's plans for mitigating the cost to producers and other entities like sale barns to comply with the rule?
Well, this is really, I think, an investment to support and preserve market opportunities, because if we have a problem and we can't trace it back quickly, it destroys the entire market. So I would think that this is a relatively small cost associated with this. And the reality is, if Congress wants to provide us the resources to provide reimbursement, I'm more than happy to do that. But this is a very important, I think, market protective measure to ensure that we can respond quickly to an outbreak, whatever it might be, to be able to isolate, quarantine, and prevent an entire market destruction.
Yeah, and I agree. We got to think through how does that impact our producers on the ground. Second question, as we work to prevent animal disease outbreaks here at home, we also have to protect the U.S. Food supply against introduction of diseases from our trading partners. The USDA recently issued a final rule allowing for the importation of beef from Paraguay, despite Paraguay's long history of foot and mouth disease. Does Paraguay, in your view, have the necessary means to fund its foot and mouth disease mitigation measures, and how will USDA ensure there's no lapse in safety mitigation measures in
We spent 8 years looking at this issue. I have a lot of faith and confidence in the people that work for APHIS. There have been multiple audits of their system. We're convinced that their system is equivalent in terms of their ability to detect, their ability to quarantine, their ability to respond quickly. We also have put a series of conditions on the importation. The beef can't come from a facility that's ever had any FMD. It can't come from a region that's had FMD in the last year. It's inspected both before and after slaughter. So we are confident that we have a system that will ensure protection. And I think I've got to have confidence in the APHIS folks when they tell me after 8 years of study, they're equivalent.
Okay. Last question is likely, I'm sure you know, the EPA recently proposed a rule that would impact the effluent limitation guidelines and standards for meat and poultry processing facilities. By EPA's own estimates, this rule could potentially close between 16 and 53 meat, poultry, and rendering facilities. Meanwhile, USDA has spent hundreds of millions of dollars to expand meat and poultry processing capacity. Did the EPA consult with USDA on the impacts of this rule prior to its publication, and how do you plan to engage with the EPA on this moving forward?
We provided information and data in an effort to try to bolster the least restrictive option. There are 3 options, as you know, that they've proposed. We provided information in an effort to try to bolster the least restrictive option that they've identified.
Yeah, big picture. It's frustrating for me, taxpayers, when, we're spending all this money to try to improve capacity and enhance capacity, which we should. At the same time, the EPA is putting on regulations. I understand that's the EPA and not the USDA. We're pushing on the door on one side and pushing on it, pulling on the other. Last question, with the last 30 seconds. One thing I'm really passionate about is our Food for Peace program and the notion of using American-grown commodities to feed hungry people around the world. Can you speak to the importance of using U.S.-grown commodities in our international food aid programs, which is obviously also authorized in the Farm Bill?
Well, it's a critical component of the McGovern dole. It's a critical component of Food for Progress. it's a critical component of the Bill Emerson Trust if we get it replenished. So it's obviously a very significant tool that we have to try to address global food insecurity.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.